Welcome, everybody. Hello. They got me sitting in the dark. It's probably the best at least to keep me that way for a while. Well, hey, this has it's going to be great to kind of get to finish off this last of this series with you guys. There are some pretty interesting things that keep happening to me. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but I want you to look at the title for my message today, Unstoppable Idiots. And I'm starting to wonder, because every time I go to teach, just something, I end up with some kind of like digging in a ditch, or I get an axe head that falls off. So I'm starting to get a little wondering, how in the world does this keep happening to me? And so a few weeks ago, I wanted to kind of get a peek at what's going on. And I didn't tell those guys, I installed new security cameras in my living room. And that's kind of where we meet, in my living room. And so I installed cameras. And this is kind of what's been happening to me. Now we all understand. Here, let's watch this here. This is my security footage from my house.
Well, thanks guys for coming. The biggest thing, we got to figure out this morning is just how to just come up with a good way to illustrate the message.
Hey Nick, I have to the bathroom. Can you guys just go ahead and start without me? I'll be right back.
Sure.
So what exactly is the message this week?
Well, what I really want to communicate is, as part of this Unstoppable series and just the mission of the church, we're part of an unstoppable mission that God's called us to, that you don't have to be an expert, you don't have to be a brainiac, have all these mad skills, just really that you don't even really have to be that smart. You could basically just be an idiot and still be a part of accomplishing the mission.
Yeah. Okay, so unstoppable idiots basically is what you're saying.
That's great.
Honestly, probably the best way to do this, the perfect way to illustrate it, would just be have Roger teach it.
That's a great idea. An
See?
unstoppable idiot. Have
Exactly.
Roger do it. Well, wait till he gets back here and we'll...
Okay.
Hey guys, what'd I miss?
Oh, we're just sitting here brainstorming some thoughts, and would you want to teach us Sunday?
Yeah, it'd be awesome. What's the topic?
Oh, we'll get to the topic here in a few minutes. It may be good just to kind of dive in and look at some of the thoughts, we might have here on some other things, and then we'll get back to the topic.
Okay, sure. Whenever you guys are ready.
It's a conspiracy, isn't it? It's a conspiracy. It's been confirmed now. This is how I always end up with these topics. Well, my goal is by the end of this day, you're going to be proud to wear the badge of unstoppable idiot. That is my goal, okay? So that's where we're going to try ending up this day. But what we have to kind of look at first, we're going to have to look at our life mission. And then I'll teach you why we want to be unstoppable idiots as we go along. This is our life mission. It's to lead people to become fully devoted followers of Christ. That is what we have been called to do. And it's a calling. How many people that's your calling? Raise your hand. Now, if you took communion a few minutes ago, that is your calling. Now to put your hand back up. If you took communion, when you stood and you got baptized, you said, I'm a follower of Christ, I'm going to follow him wherever he's going, and you got dunked and you came out and you were then, I'm baptized, or you take communion, you're saying, I want to be a follower of Christ. You became called. And you became called to do something that's beyond your personal power, beyond what you can do on your own. And so what we're going to talk about tonight is one of the reasons, or today, why are some of the reasons we maybe don't pull that off and we don't quite get there. Or maybe you're in a lull in your faith and you're saying, I don't quite feel like I did 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 weeks ago. And so we want to kind of wrestle with a little bit. So we're going to look at this passage here. Just look at this. It was God who gave some to be apostles, some to be prophets, some to be evangelists, and some to be pastors and teachers, to prepare God's people for works of ministry. Now, I just want to pick through this passage a little bit and point out some of the things that kind of initially start causing us to maybe not pull off that calling that God has called us to. That he's mandated on us to become followers of Christ and to reach others. Now, listen to this. You look at that list up there. Do you feel like you match any of those? And when I read this list, I say, well, I'm a little bit of this, but that other one scares me. I mean, I don't mind being a teacher, but I don't know if I want to be that evangelist, man. Those guys, or those prophecy guys, man, I don't know if I can get into all that. And so what we normally do, we look at what we can't do and what we don't want to be, and so we eliminate ourselves from the whole picture. But what God did, he said, I called some to be this, some to be that, some to be this. You don't have to be all. You'll probably end up playing a role at certain points in time, but you don't have to be all of those things. So many of us, we exclude ourselves automatically because we don't know if we can pull that one off, or I don't know enough about that one, and so we eliminate ourselves from the ministry of God. Anybody relate to that sometimes? You look at some of those names, those titles, and you go, I am no evangelist. I've met him. He's really good at it. I'm not good at that, so I can't compete with him. And so you stay out. You miss the thing you are good at, though. You might be a great teacher. Here's something else I want to kind of point out a little bit. You notice one person's not all of those? And I just talking for somebody who was in youth ministry, full-time ministry for 23 years, paid ministry is this. I always felt like I was supposed to be all of those things. Not just one, not just the thing I was called to, but there was always this overwhelming man's perception that if you're a pastor at a church, that you're supposed to be all of those things. And we've all met people who are extremely good at this one, but they stink at this one. I've met a lot of great evangelists who are not very good pastors. I've met, and this is a funny one, there's this guy who runs a church in Columbus, Ohio. If you hear this man speak, you will want to pierce your ears out with screwdrivers, I promise you. His speaking style, and he just goes on and on and on. You go, this guy's their main speaker? This guy runs a church of 6,000 or 7,000 people. There's something within him. You know who I'm talking about, don't you guys in the front row? Yes, we all know the ones. You go to one of the Vineyard conferences and you'd hear this guy, you're like, really? This guy runs a church? But the thing is, his gifting, it wasn't about him, but his message, the content of what he said was incredible, was challenging, was inspiring, it was like you're hearing God speak words in new ways that you've not heard him spoken before. But his presentation was horrible. Horrible. I remember walking, I was like, oh my gosh, please be quiet. You know what? God used this guy to build a church that's reaching communities beyond any church you've seen around here. Just blown that area away. He was an ex-college professor. His name was Rich Nathan. If you ever get a chance, look him up. He's a great guy. Powerful, but not a good speaker. I would tell him to his face. I really would. So we got this. So listen, you see this and you go, well, why are we talking about this? Because most of us, we think some of you guys are really brilliant people, but you go, I'm afraid to talk about it. I'm afraid to share. I don't know if I can do this. You don't have to. Because God has made a history of using people that were the unexpected. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. This passage, you also might think, well, does this mean that I pretty much have to quit my real job? You know, I'm supposed to be going out there, God, I'm supposed to be preparing people, and I'm supposed to be doing this all the time? From somebody who was in full-time ministry for 23 years and now works in the real world, you might say. What everybody would say, I always heard that as a pastor, well, you don't work in the real world. Well, I understand now. My personal contact on a daily basis with non-believers and unbelievers or people who are questioning their faith has went up exponentially since I stopped working for a church. God has put you in a position at your work, and you might think, oh, it'd be so awesome to work at a church. But God's called you. We all laugh. God calls you to be out with people. Some were called to work for a church. That's their full-time ministry. But not most of us. We're called to be with people. Because this is not just a mandate of just these people, but the goal of everything is that we're preparing people to do ministry. Preparing God's people to do the works of ministry. That is what you have been called. There is no escape clause or contingent circumstances that get you out of that calling. You follow Christ. This is your calling. Our desire is to figure out what role we play, to be prepared, to be trained, to be teachable. But that takes time. The biggest issue we really run into is this. Most of us, we disqualify ourselves right off the bat. It is uncomfortable for me to get up here and speak. You ask anybody who knows me and what I have to go through to actually get up on the stage. It's miserable for me. It takes weeks for me to build up the courage to even come up here. And I understand the fear that a lot of people face because they think they're going to have to speak in front of a group. They're going to talk. Say, what if I don't know what to say? And so today, I'm really just want to be a little bit more bare and just not naked or anything like that, but bare and open about just about life and just about what keeps us. And one of the things I found mostly, we gravitate towards comfort. Do you agree? If it's hot outside, where do we want to be? In the air conditioning or a pool? If it's cold outside, we want to be by a fireplace or the furnace. If we're hungry, we want a buffet. You know? And so we gravitate towards comfort. But unfortunately, what God has called us to is something that's uncomfortable because it's unnatural for us to do. And so there's discomfort built into this calling. And a lot of times when we see this, we're just like, I don't know if I can put up with the discomfort to pull off what God wants me to do. So that's one, we like comfort. The second thing is this, many of us, we don't feel like we're prepared enough, and we're waiting for someday I'll be better prepared. I'll be in a better position. Well, maybe once my kids are out of the house, or maybe once I get to take that Bible class or whatever. Maybe then I can be that person that God wants me to be. But that's not how Scripture works. And it's not, here's my proof. In the Bible, in the book of Acts, you see Peter and John are basically out healing people. Matter of fact, they heal this one guy who had been lame for years, and they heal him, and he's this lame guy who's been lame for years. Everybody knew this guy too, because they plopped him down at the gates where everybody would walk by, and he begged for money. That's where they plop him down there every day. And this day, they walk in, and Peter, I won't get into the whole story, they say, you're healed, get up and walk away. People are astonished. You know who's not astonished? The religious leaders, called the Sanhedrin. Religious leaders are ticked off, actually, because that's stuff that religious people are supposed to do. That's stuff they're supposed to do. But for some reason, God didn't use them to do that. They were missing it. So they bring these Peter and John up before them, and they're ready to kind of lash out at them, going, what are you doing in the streets? Because you're causing all this upheaval going on. People are starting to talk about you, talk about what you're doing. And here's the story. Read this passage with me. We're going to jump around a little bit, and we'll get back to our other point. When they saw the courage of Peter and John and realized that they were unschooled, ordinary men, they were astonished, and they took note of these men. They took note that these men had been with Jesus. Now, the word I want to focus on is ordinary men. The translators were very kind when they translated this word. It actually comes from a Greek word. Can you put that up there? Is that up there in the notes? Idiot. There he is. Idiotes. It's in Greek. I don't know how to say it in Greek, but here it is. An ignoramus, an ignorant or unlearned person, an idiot. That is what they called Peter and John. Idiots. Now, I like this phrase because I like being able to call people idiots at church. The only thing these idiots knew was the fact that they had been with Jesus. They looked at these people, they go, you aren't educated enough. You don't have enough experience. You don't fit the mold. You haven't been through our process to do these things, to even be in the presence of us. And these are the religious leaders talking of the day. And basically, they call them idiots. I like that. I want to be an idiot. I'm qualified for that. You see the difference? See all those excuses that you start throwing up, all those excuses you start throwing out there? Peter and John were fishermen, uneducated, lived day to day. But they were idiots who had been with Jesus. They'd been in the presence of Jesus. Can you go back to our slide with the God doesn't call? So what we kind of want to say is this. God doesn't call the prepared, but he prepares the called. Let that sink in for a few minutes. You see, you want to be all ready to go, and God says, I want you to go now. You want to wait till you get something else accomplished, and God says, come with me and we'll accomplish a lot more than you can do on your own. God doesn't call the prepared, but prepares the called. And that is our task. Some of us are a little further down the road, and our job now is to start preparing other people, not sitting back and relaxing. God didn't call us to come to Sunday mornings to be entertained. He called us to be used to prepare us to go out and prepare others. That is the call of God. Somewhere along the ways, we jumped ship and we got comfortable again. We got tired of the discomfort of the building, setting up, tearing down. We got discomfort because somebody in this room we don't like. We got all these different reasons we've decided we feel uncomfortable, and we decided to move towards something that was comfortable. And the most comfortable thing for me is sitting back with a Coke in my hands, being entertained. I got a nice little cushy spot on my sofa that I can sit and I'm comfortable. But I'm not fulfilling God's calling. So God's call is that I'm supposed to be uncomfortable a little bit. So discomfort is supposed to happen. I go before I'm prepared. Because in the process, I will be prepared. So here's Peter and John. They're basically sending out, and they're following Jesus, and they're kind of going on. They're just average, ordinary people. And they're just trying to figure out what in the world they're going to do next. They have this, they've seen what God had did with the healing of the person. And I bet they were as shocked as anyone. The Sanhedrin are really, really confused, though. Because they really didn't want these guys, because this was interrupting the flow, their comfort level. They had everything in place. Okay, I'm going to tell you a creepy story, okay? You ready? I'm not going to make you see the video. Your high school kids are tired of this. They've heard about it a lot. Mouse Utopia. Mouse Utopia was an experiment done in the 1970s, probably, whenever it was. Hey, who knows when they came up with black and white TV? You got color and film. What year was that? Anybody know that? Old enough to know that? It was back then. So they did this experiment. It was a really old experiment. And we have video of it, and it's really creepy. We don't want to show it to you because you might be like, oh, I'm freaked out. And so it's this big box they created. And in this box would hold up to 3,000 mice. It had enough food. It had enough space for them to live. It had everything a mouse would want. It's mouse heaven, utopia. And they put the mice in this box, and they started with just a few. Mice do what they do. And they start multiplying, and its population starts growing. And the population grows a little bit more. It finally gets to a certain point after the second generation, something started to happen. You see, the first generations, they were basically interacting and doing a lot of other stuff, and, to create more. And so they basically grew the population very well, and there was place for everybody, and there was enough food for everybody. Everybody was happy. The second generation comes along, fighting starts. Some of the positions were full. There was kind of already a leadership structure in place that was kind of keeping others from kind of getting a chance to do what they wanted to do or to be what they wanted to be. And we're talking little mice here. I don't know what they want to do in life, but they couldn't do it, okay? And so these little mice, they keep fighting. And matter of fact, they started fighting so much, they start biting off each other's tails. And so they start biting at each other. And so there's all these little bloodied tail mice in the second generation. The third generation, this is what happens to them. The third generation comes along, and they look down, and they see everything's taken. They see all the tail biters, and they don't want to get their tail bit. So they went off into the corner, and this is all this. They show video of these things, and they just groom themselves. And they groom. And in this little video, it says, they were the perfect specimen. They were perfect in everything, but they were stupid. They basically sat on the side, and they sat on the sideline, and they groomed themselves. Now, I don't mean to call any of you guys stupid mice. We're idiots, remember. We're not stupid mice. But have you ever seen, or have you maybe had moments where you felt like you became a beautiful one? Instead of getting into the game, instead of interacting, instead of getting into it, instead of there being enough, getting into what was happening, you got to the point, everything you thought was being done, everything else was taken, there was nothing for you to do, so you sat outside and you primped. And basically you become beautiful but shallow. And I think this is what's caused the American church, especially when we talk about, and I'm not talking to you guys, I'm talking about the American church in general, we have basically become very comfortable sitting on the sidelines, grooming ourselves, and we miss what God has called us to do. Because it's comfortable. We disqualify ourselves. God has called us to get in the mix. Let me tell you one more thing about these little mice. Once the mice got to the second or third generation, this little structure was made for 3,000 mice to have enough space, food. They got rid of disease, everything that could hinder the growth of the colony, the grouping. They got to a certain point to about 2,000. Plenty, another 1,000 of them could be there. The pretty ones, they stopped mating. They started killing each other off, and there was a decline. The colony on its own basically died off. No really outside factors to cause it to die off. And I just want to think about it. Have you been to a church that's been that way? Have you been to a team? Have you been to any kind of group that's wanting to grow, and somehow something happened along the way that things kind of capped out and they started to die? And we have to start thinking, why does that happen? And some of that is because we have created so many set groupings that there's no room for new people to come up. The initial people get comfortable in their positions and they don't let anybody else in. They stop training the new. They stop breeding and mating and multiplying with themselves because they just become lazy. And the reason I like this illustration because I think it's a microcosm of our churches. Not this one, but church in general, the American church. And this isn't a bashing this thing, but it's just a call to think, why are we still stuck in this system? And so today we wanted to know that there's no special training, there's plenty of room in the society of the grouping of our colony of this church, the American church. There's plenty of room for more growth. When we start thinking we're satisfied and we stop multiplying, the kingdom of God suffers. So my goal today is to eliminate some more of our excuses for today, and it's just a natural part of what we do. They look at these idiots and they said, these idiots who have been with Jesus, that was the changing factor. In this colony, something had to change, or we're going to do the same thing. And in the fact here is, we have been with Jesus. He has called us to something supernatural, not the natural. He didn't call us to bite each other's tails off. He taught us to love each other, to find ways to work around. He said, don't y'all want to be in this one little place, but branch out and reach others. So these mice, they all want to be in one little sliver because that's where all the cool mice hang out. There's plenty of space next door, but don't we do that also? We want to be at the cool church. We want to be with the cool small group. We want to be with the cool leader or whatever. And it kills us. It hurts us. God says, I gave each one of you called to be apostles, to be evangelists, called to be these things, to go out and reach new people and to spread our wings a little bit more. Jim and I, we've talked. We hope that the goal is to become a church planting church, because we know that once a church gets a certain size, we have to plant and grow another church. We have to send people out who feel called to do ministry, to be pastors. We want to send them out, not keep them here. The next thing I want to talk about is this. And this is why this is so important. Verse 14, it says this. Acts 14 says, but since they could see the man who had been healed standing there with them, there was nothing they could say. Many of us, we have critics in our head. We have external critics and internal critics. We have external critics who are telling us, you're no good, you're not worthy, you're not qualified to do this. We have internal critics that are going on in our own head that are telling you're not good enough. You got that one issue you haven't quite dealt with yet. You're a sinner. You're a smut. You're a loser. All these words start going flying through your heads that causes you to say, I am disqualified for ministry. But the cool thing is God used in this situation ordinary men with all the same hang-ups that you carry and who know nothing more than Jesus to silence the leaders of the church. He shut them up. God is called, he wants to shut up the critics in your head. And he does that by using you to do things that are beyond your ability and your control if you're willing to hear the call. So as you think through your life and think through things, I like speaking things that just make you wrestle a little bit. I don't have all the answers. I don't. I can tell you this. I've been disqualified from ministry several times. I was thrown out of my high school youth group as a 17-year-old because I was an idiot. I was stupid. Okay, let's get it right. I've been fired from 2 churches who disqualified me from ministry. One because of my own personal failing, one because I was considered to be insubordinate. Been disqualified. Man's structure, wanting me to live up to something that I can't achieve on my own, I can't be, disqualifies me. And some of you feel disqualified because one time you weren't chosen to be the leader of a group, you weren't asked to be on staff, and you have all these reasons that have disqualified you from ministry. I'm ready to tell you that God says, you're an idiot, and I love you. You're an idiot. I can use you. Matter of fact, I feel bad for those people who were, if you're like Mr. Popularity in school and you did everything right and you were prom queen and prom, you had everything that was perfect for you. You're the top of your game. I just want to let you know, God can still use you, but he specializes in idiots. You look through the history of who he used, it was idiots. Now, these idiots has a few special traits, and so some of the traits that these idiots have, and this is the important part, we're not just saying just go around and be dumb and just wander around, but the idiots had, one, been with Jesus, and two, they give their whole lives to him. They gave it all to him. There was no second thoughts about it. Matter of fact, when Simon and Peter, basically they're out there fishing, and he's fishing, and they're out there, they're trying to fill the boats, they're having just a really bad day. Now, when you're a fisherman in this day and age, you got to remember, you live day to day. There were no freezers. You couldn't have a big catch one day, throw them in on ice, and keep them for the next week and sell them the next day to make money. It was basically a day-to-day business. You had to basically, you catch the fish, you take it in, you sell the fish right then and there before it spoils. You get paid, you feed your family, day-to-day living. Sound like a lot of us? Day-to-day living. Here comes Jesus, walks along and says, I know you're having a bad day, but hey, throw those nets over there. You're not a fisherman. Just do it. Okay, throw them over. I'm sure they're like, okay, let's see what this guy has to say now. I know he's a prophet or something. They call him something like a prophet. They throw the nets over, the nets bulge out, about sink the boat. That's the guy I want to follow. He didn't just provide for today. He started providing enough to provide for maybe enough I could sell to live for tomorrow. So he's got their attention now, and he basically says, come and follow me. He goes, come follow me. I want to make you not just fishermen of fish. I want to make you fishermen of men. Here, look at this passage. It's out of Luke 5:8. It says this, when Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man. Then Jesus said to Simon, don't be afraid. From now on you will catch men. So they pulled their boats up on shore, left everything, and followed him. Now, the first thing you see, when you see the presence of Jesus in your life, it's humbling. What is Peter's first reaction? It wasn't, oh, come give me a hug. It's like, oh my God, you must be God. And he backed off. So the first thing that we kind of see, the people who really want to be followers and actually fulfill the call of God, you have to be reverent enough and understand your place and what he has done for you, even though he can see the sin. I mean, Peter's saying, I'm a sinful man, and Jesus is going, I know. Peter's going, you can't use me. Just you can't use me. I got all these critics in my head. I got people, they're going to call me dumb. I don't know enough. And Jesus goes, I know. I want you. Because you're the one that's going to catch men for me. You're the one that's going to connect, relate. You're the one that's going to build bridges. You're the one that understands about catch and release. You're the one that understands about getting in there and living day by day off of what you make that day. He goes, I want that urgency. I want someone who understands that to come catch men with me. I want you to come. And they pulled up their nets, left everything. And let's be honest, what would we do? We would get on the internet and check out his reviews. We'd see if there's a better idea on Pinterest. We would hit our Facebook friends, hey, do you have any suggestions on really about following this guy? Because he might be crazy. And we're going to basically discredit everything about it. And we feel this moment, this passion to do something, but we think through all the different reasons we can't do it. We start thinking, I'm not good enough. I'm a sinner. I got that one sin I haven't overcome yet. I got all this going on. I'm not qualified. And you disqualify yourself. And God looked at Peter and just goes, you're exactly what I want. And he looks at you and he goes, you're exactly what I want. I want a humble person who knows their place and knows their calling. That's what I'm looking for. Unstoppable idiots. Goes on a little bit further and says this. Therefore, in the present case, I advise you, leave these men. Okay, let me get a set up. Sorry, I just want to set up the story a little bit for you. So basically, we're a little bit farther on in Acts here. And they're trying to figure out, the religious leaders, the Sanhedrin, they're trying to figure out how do we stop these guys from keep spreading, because basically the church had grown by 5,000 people already from these unstoppable idiots, just going out and doing all they knew. I know Jesus, I'm telling the story of Jesus, 5,000 people come, want to hear more about this Jesus. Church is growing like crazy. People are getting healed, things are happening, and the Sanhedrin's like, I want to be comfortable again. Put them away, make me comfortable again. And so they're trying to squash these group of people. And one of their men was kind of wise, and he says this is what he says. He goes, therefore, in the present case, I advise you, leave these men alone, let them go. For if their purpose or activity is of human origin, it will fail. But if it is from God, you will not be able to stop these men. You will only find yourselves fighting against God. Oh, he had no idea, did he? Wise person, though. Our little mouse utopia, our little church utopia that some of us live in, if left just to human ways and human standards and human things, our colony, the kingdom of God will die. But when we understand it, if it's inspired by God and we're following Jesus and we're just telling people about Jesus, we're not worried about all the politics stuff. We're not worried about who's right and wrong about all these different theological things. And we're just moving on and we're saying, I know Jesus, and this is what he did in my life, and I want to tell people about it. That's supernatural. Not that other stuff's not important. Some of you guys are real brainiacs, and I love that. But if you miss out on the whole purpose of why you know all that stuff, then you miss out on the calling that God has for you. It's okay to have theology. It's okay to have all, but if it becomes your priority and your focus, and you forgive, the purpose was to be loving, caring, loving other people, sharing Christ with people, telling them what he did in you, you're missing your calling to prepare people. Whenever he gets into theology, stuff like that, I tell him to talk to Teller. I don't know it. You know what? I've rarely had a 16-year-old ever ask me, can you tell me about sanctification? Can you tell me about predispensationalism? Did I say that right? Not one. They might have asked me the idea. They might have shared it. But you don't have to know all that stuff to be able to be a follower of Christ and to be prepared and be reaching people for Christ. So what we're saying today is we're all in. We're all qualified. So I'm driving here today. I had a car accident a few weeks ago. Somebody reared into me. They kind of smashed my car. My car goes into the shop. They give me a Ford Mustang, brand new one. It's awesome. It's a beautiful car. I love driving it. However, I determined that you cannot have kids with legs and drive this car. It was a problem. So I traded it in for a Jeep Grand Cherokee is what they gave me, and I am loving this car. It is beautiful. It's wide. It's beautiful. It's great. It just rides over all the bumps. I look for potholes now and stuff just to drive through them. So I'm going, and this is just funny. This just came to me on my way to church this morning. Every time I come to a stoplight, the engine shuts off. Now, the first time I started driving about 3 or 4 days ago, I pull up to the stoplight, the engine shuts off. And I'm like, they're going to shoot me if I broke this car. I've wrecked one. I'm on my second rental car. This thing's dying on me in the middle of the street. I got to be someplace. I let up on the brake. Car starts back up. Like, what's going on with this car? It's just something wrong with it. I'm getting ready to start calm. Get to the next one. Stop at the stoplight. Car shuts off. I lift up on the brake. Ready to go. I'm like, what is going on with this car? This thing is messed up. So I discovered that this car has a built-in feature to save gas. Then when you pull up, and some of you might have these fancy cars like this. I never had a fancy car like this one. So you pull up, you stop, and then when you stop, when it sits, the engine just turns off. And I think this is what's happened to some of us as believers. We were cruising through life and cruising on the road. Something came along to make us put on our brakes, and our engine of our faith kind of shut off. Remember I said, why are you not feeling God's love? Why are you not feeling inspired by what God's doing? Why are you struggling in your faith? Why are you struggling witnessing to other people? Because sometimes all these things that we think that we've thrown on ourselves have become the brake. We've put the brakes on what God's doing in our life. It's not God stopping. God wants to go. But we slam on the brake. We hit the brake, boom, engine dies. our faith becomes blah. We've been just doing it. We're like the mice. We might look pretty on the outside, but on the inside, we're kind of stupid spiritually. And you think, why is this? Why aren't I experiencing what other people are experiencing with God? And it's because you've let all these different things that you think of, that man's expectations and man's ways of doing things, you've let them put the brake on your faith. The cool thing about this car, though, and it's pretty amazing. By the time you let up on the brake, the engine starts before you can even get to the gas pedal. It's raring to go. It is ready to move. You let up on the brake, car just turns on like that. And it's ready to gas it, and it's fun to drive. What brakes have you put on in your faith? What brakes did you slam on at one point in time? God calls us to live an unstoppable, idiot life. To let up on the brakes, to let's go and let's get moving and see what God can do with to fulfill your calling that he has planned for you. So as I kind of close out for prayer, I just want to kind of throw this question out here for you. Let me throw this out here. How does God want to use you to partner with other believers at Life Change Church? How does he want you to partner with other believers? In small groups, maybe you need to be more open this week. Maybe in small group, you need to share a little bit your struggles. Instead of the group just being a fun group of hanging out together, maybe it becomes a group that gets deep together. Maybe it means you need to call that friend and say, I need to have something I need to share with you. And you might not want all the answers, you might not know all the details, but you know enough to say, before I met Jesus, my life was a wreck. That's all I know. That's it. We can figure it out together, the next step together if you want. That's all I know. What can you do to partner with other believers so that this kingdom, this little Christian utopia that God desires for us, how can we see it grow instead of being stunted by a bunch of tail eaters? How can we grow a church, the kingdom of God? So as a closing prayer, let me just think this through. What brake did you put on? What thought of insecurity, fear has caused you to slam on the brakes? The question is today, are you ready to let up on the brake and be an unstoppable idiot for Christ? We want to wear that title as a badge of honor, to be an unstoppable idiot. I told you it'd be a good thing when we got done. Let's just close in prayer. Let's kind of ponder some of the things. Ask God about those things.